In Formula One's ever-persistent push to bring closer racing in the sport, their efforts may actually be doing more bad than good. Sure, to be successful in Formula One, you need to have great drivers, but as we all know, it's almost all about the car. So the question is there to be asked, is changing the Formula One regulations drastically every few years actually bringing closer racing, or is it killing it? Watch the end and I'll explain why. First of all, the progression of the car is absolutely the most important development in the off-season and, in fact, throughout the season. For example, today we see McLaren Racing fighting at the front as arguably the best car on the grid, whereas at the start of only the 2023 season, they were genuinely the worst car on the grid. So we know that with enough time given in a certain set of regulations, teams are able to fight back through and actually get closer in performance and closer to the optimal performance of that set of regulations. And while some teams are better at this progression than others, it applies to literally every car on the grid. And let me show you what I mean. So the current F1 regulations era began after that fateful 2021 season at the start of the 2022 season, where Ferrari made a huge jump forward and Red Bull maintained much of their dominance, and well, Mercedes, they saw a bit of a step back. So evident here, F1 regulation overhauls are good at changing things up and down the field, where some cars will come further up, like we saw Haas even make a pretty good jump forward from being a permanent back marker. So if the goal of the overhauls are to mix things up and down the field, then they're pretty successful. However, are they bringing closer racing? F1 and the FIA's biggest agenda when bringing in these regulations is that it would bring closer racing. So let's see how that went as we see the field spread at the start of the 2022 season. Okay, wow, yeah. In the first qualifying session of the season, we saw a gap between first place Ferrari and last place Williams of over 3 seconds, which was very consistent throughout the entire season. But let's fast forward to the first qualifying session in Bahrain of 2024 this year, where the entire field spread was separated by less than a second, with Max setting a 1:30.0 and Gasly, Alpine in last of course, with a 1:39. By the way, just to add this, Alpine last, well, you know, they're now actually competing for points, so let that be another point, pun intended. So within 2 seasons, the field had already been brought together drastically, with another 2 seasons left of these regulations. And this field spread, minus the weather conditions in certain qualifying sessions like we just saw in Great Britain, has been very consistent throughout the entire season, as in the last race without wet qualifying in Austria, the whole field was separated by a mere 7/10. This is absolutely incredible, and the fact that only 1/10 can make you lose or gain 5 or 6 positions in most cases means that you must be driving absolutely perfectly at every moment, or you might get caught out in qualifying, as has been true for our friend Sergio Perez. Here's a fun fact for you. Sergio Perez, in, I guess, arguably the best car on the grid, has actually been out-qualified by, as what many people call the worst driver on the grid, Logan Sargeant. 6 times. 6 times, Logan Sargeant has out-qualified Sergio Perez this season. The biggest thing to talk about here as well is that Red Bull is not alone at the top anymore. The fact that we genuinely don't know who the best car is going to be going into a race weekend, at the moment it's probably between McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes, and if you want to, you could put Ferrari up there, but the dominance is really between those 3 right now at most tracks. This is absolutely unheard of for most fans, as the last 3 seasons has been dominated by hearing that ever frustrating Dutch national anthem every single weekend. And to prove the difference between these seasons, in 2022 we saw 5 different race winners throughout the entire season, when Ferrari was pretty dominant, so you know that's to be expected. Last year we saw only 3, and this year already we have seen 6 different race winners, none of which, by the way, being Sergio Perez. We've seen 2 Mercedes, we've seen 2 Ferraris, we've seen a McLaren, and we've seen, of course, Max Verstappen. There are 4 teams genuinely competing for race wins on raw pace, and as we saw at the British Grand Prix last weekend, it's genuinely anyone's race to win. Formula One is in the best place that it has been for years. Still, people will complain about things, but that's a them problem. Let's be real. And can we be honest for a second as well? There's no need to beat around the bush. With the way things are going up the front at the moment, with Red Bull competing with arguably only 1 car, and McLaren's current form, the Constructors' Championship is genuinely Red Bull's to lose. As it stands, there are 71 points between Red Bull and Ferrari, and 78 points ahead of McLaren in P3, who at the moment have incredible form. So I genuinely predict that if things stay the same as they are right now, throughout the rest of the season, McLaren will win the Constructors' Championship. And hey, I probably will be wrong, but let's just see how that one ages. And now, okay, I have waffled on a lot about how F1 is really great at the moment and how things have progressed throughout the seasons, but why do I bring this all up? Well, you see, there's a very simple correlation that we can draw from this. As you put a little graph here, the more time you spend on a certain regulation, the closer the racing will get. You see? It's simple. You don't need to say anything more than that. It makes sense, it's proven, and yet we still want to change things all the time. And now, I do understand why the regulation changes are an exciting thing, because it's good to see where cars will shape up as they bring things in that are brand new. So you might see Williams jump up, for example, in 2026, or Haas, Alfa Romeo, maybe. Who knows? Another great point which was raised to me by F1 Kids TV presenter Scarlett Archer, who also pointed out that it also sparks a lot of excitement off the track too, as you see most of the silly season, driver moves, and all sorts of team changes generally change depending on when the regulations are coming in. So it does bring some good, but the following is true above all else. Objectively, regulation changes separate the grid. In fact, making racing racing further apart. So that leaves us with this truth. The longer that we leave regulations the same, the closer that racing will get. It's simple as that. However, we can't just leave them the same forever. I'm not saying that we should never change the regulations, because regulation changes are good for the sport in the long term, because without them, the sport would just become stale. However, maybe we should leave them for a little bit longer. I know 4 years seems like a long time, but in reality, it's really not. As realistically, by the time everyone starts to get close together, they will change the regulations. I mentioned 2021 earlier, and if you ask most current modern F1 fans what the most exciting season was, they will say 2021, and sure, a lot of that is because of the Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton battles, but we also saw so much exciting racing up and down the field all over the place, and it genuinely was such a great season because the racing was so close, as it had been left for quite a few years. And if you think I'm just some fan talking absolute rubbish out of my ass, well, you are right, to be fair. Let's not get that wrong. But this is no foreign idea to those who do know what they're talking about, as even Martin Brundle and David Croft have talked about the matter and say that this is the truth. And Martin has said on broadcast that he would like to see them leave the regulations for a little bit longer too, because it does bring such good racing. So then, what now? Well, the regulation changes are coming in 2026, and there's nothing we can do about that. I predict that the 2025 season will be an incredible racing season, and Max Verstappen might not even win the championship, and there's a pretty good chance that he does, but if he does, I don't think it will be so straightforward anymore. And when it comes to 2026, we might see some changes up and down the field, but one thing's for sure, separation will probably return. But this is of course just one man's opinion, backed by stats and data of course, but hey, what do I know? Please tell me, what do you guys think of regulation changes? Do you think they should be done more or less? And hey, while we're talking about it, what do you think of the 2024 season so far? Let me know your predictions in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this rant of a video, and if you enjoyed it, why not give it a like? And hey, remember, if you don't subscribe, Max Verstappen will win every race. Well, unless you're a Red Bull fan, then I guess it gives him 10 years of good luck. Until next time, check out these videos here in the meantime, and I'll catch you all in the next one.